All right, how's it going? My name's IPA Fan, and this is Church with Chug. Today we are chugging a brown ale, and we are talking about guilty pleasure beers. Next to me is Sam.
Hello, Ice Cream Brews. Today I'm going to be chugging AleSmith out of San Diego, their nut brown style brown ale. And they only sell it in this 12 ounce, so, but it looks nice.
You got two of them, right?
Oh, you're gonna do a 24-ounce chug, right?
No, I'm gonna do 12. I'm gonna be a good girl. It's Easter.
Beer lover?
Beer lover here. I'm going to be chugging a Obscure Obsolation. We get that label in there. Out of Poughkeepsie. This is a Belgian Brown Ale with honey, 6.6%.
Ricky?
All right, guys. Ricky with the good beer here. I am going to be chugging a brown ale from Newburgh Brewing Company. All right, very light, 4%. I don't even know what the name of it is called, to be honest with you. Soft and toasty brown ale. Got to keep.
Henry?
Popped up Synchromist here. I'm gonna be drinking a Samuel Smith nut brown ale,
Nice.
coming in at 5%.
We're in the old school.
Oh yeah.
Monkey?
Hey, Drunken Monkey here. I'm going to be drinking Smutty Nose Brewing Company out of Hampton, New Hampshire. It's Old Brown Dog American Brown Ale, 6.5%.
Cool. J-Hump?
Craft Wetness here, and I'm gonna be chugging this brown ale from Cigar City, Maduro,
Noodle.
but it's
Noodle.
5.5%,
Cool.
12
And
ounce.
I am going to be chugging what I probably shouldn't. It's actually a Firestone Bravo 2017 Imperial Brown Ale.
Woo.
It's
Yes,
all I
sir.
could freaking find that wasn't a six pack. And I wasn't going to buy a
Yeah.
six pack.
Yeah.
But to get in here and open it up and all that shit, it was a workout. So I'm like wondering like how they're trying to tell me don't chug this shit. And here, like, I'm going to be like, "Don't chug it."
What's the ABV on that?
13
for you.
2.
That's a 13%. Oh yeah. Give it to you.
You're going to be the last party after Easter, Easter gathering.
Yeah.
So I might not make it back to the birthday party after this. I might just crash out. Jesus Christ. All right, cool. Everybody pour it out.
You didn't
Yes.
introduce our guest.
Cool. Ricky, you're in the center. Count it down.
You didn't introduce our guest.
Oh, you didn't introduce our
Oh,
guest
yeah.
or what
Okay.
she's drinking.
on, bro.
And our special guest, the Rachness.
Hello, I'm Rachel the Rachness, and today I'm drinking Mr. Brown 2019 edition from Tool Brewing. It's an Imperial Brown Ale with vanilla, hazelnuts, chocolate, coffee, and salted caramel, coming in at 9%.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, my apologies. We do have a special guest today. We just seen that she was a regular, so I didn't notice it.
All right, guys, put them up.
Oh, here we go.
2,
Jeez.
1. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
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 Oh, that was smooth. You know what? I gotta think that was probably one of the
really
best chugs out of all the ones that we had.
Mm.
That was smooth.
I gotta say, I enjoy that, man. I'm definitely going with you on
Yeah.
that one now.
That was an easy chug. Let's do that again.
That wasn't easy.
That was really nice.
Nope.
That was really good.
Mhm.
All alcohol.
Definitely
Okay.
soft
Fuck
and
that.
Mm.
toasty.
They're all, man. All those Firestone, the vintage bottles, man, they're all boozy, dude.
Oh, yeah.
Hmm.
All right, give me a second to rinse this out.
Come on, bro.
Right,
You
that's
some
delicious.
beer?
You're like a DJ on the side. I just noticed that banging microphone you got. That's
Oh,
it, man.
Oh,
no, I
it's-
do. I do tech training, so I'm like always developing videos and stuff for my company. So
Oh,
I get a
great.
cool professional mic and
Yeah.
boom arm and everything.
It's like some guy should be just standing there holding it above your head. Like,
Mhm.
totally
I'm
fun.
ready for a podcast one day myself.
There you go. You got the tools.
Yep, they're all here.
So today's topic, of course, is guilty pleasure beers. Let's go ahead and introduce what we're all sipping on. Let's go with the guests first. Rachness, what do you got?
Well, when I think about guilty pleasure beers, I think about a few things. First, I think like rich, decadent beers. Like I like to sip Bottle Logic by myself. Just all their stasis beers. But I also think like trash beer, which I also love a good Corona every now and then. But today I was thinking one of my recent guilty pleasures is making micheladas out of fruited sours, like heavily fruited, either smoothie style or something sours. So typically a micha is going to be crisp and refreshing, but I like it packed with calories and sweet and delicious. So smoothie style beer, micheladas.
Sounds about right.
Yep.
Say shit.
And what do you got?
I am drinking a wheat ale, and it's called Hell or High Water from Amendment Brewery, 21st Amendment Brewery. And I think when I think of like guilty pleasures, I'm like Rachel, no, like really fruited stuff lately, like heavy fruited. But wheat beer for me, because it's hot out, that's the ones I want to bring. I can't keep drinking and drinking and drinking, so it's kind of,
Makes sense. Al, what do you got?
I am kicking back a Imprint and Tripping Animals collaboration. It's a Tripping Brulee Schmoji, and this actually has chocolate, raspberry, pomegranate, creme brulee. And I choose that because, again, as I had mentioned before, it's kind of gimmicky, desserty, kind of overindulgent. So you can't do these all the time. So this is why I prefer this to be.
Looks good.
Mhm.
Thick.
Ricky, what do you got?
All right, guys. So when I was thinking about this, the other day I was going through the store, and not only like, of course, guilty pleasures, you think about the flavor of the beer, but I'm also, man, as I was walking through the store, man, the labels always catch me, man. So I'm going with this. It's called Marty. Whatever happens, don't ever go back to 2020, and it's a flux capacitor. Dude, they just call you dry, and you're like, even it's only a hazy pale ale, 5%, but. Dude, why wouldn't you want to buy this and have the sticker and post it?
Is that Evil Genius?
Evil Genius, yeah.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Henry, what do
So
you
like that's one thing that I was thinking about when I was walking through the store the other day. Is like, not only do you sometimes go for like the smoothie stuff and stuff like that, but for me, 90% of the times, if the label's cool, I might just freaking buy it.
You're right. Absolutely. Henry, what do you got?
So I got the Imprint Colada Puffsicle with carrot oranges. I mean, guilty pleasure beers to me, if they look like a freaking smoothie, I go for them. I mean, that's lately what I've been getting into, especially when it comes to guilty pleasure beers. I'm not a big sweet tooth guy when it comes to desserts, but when it comes to smoothie beers, all for it.
Definitely. Drunken Monkey, what do you got?
So I got Hydra. It's a Pure and Jay Wakefield collab. It's a sour double IPA with dragon fruit, raspberries, and lactose. And the color on it is just awesome. Same thing. Like I've really been, especially lately and really through Chug Week, to my stomach's own demise, I drank a lot of sours and fruited sours and smoothies and stuff like that. It kind of fucked me up pretty bad the first couple days, but it's super tasty and easy to chug. So that's been mine lately.
Wet Man, Craft Wetness, what about you?
Okay, so I'll be kicking back this. I'm staying with the brown. It's a Rogue Brewing. It's a hazelnut brown.
I love that one. It's really good.
Brown nectar. It smells really good. But as far as guilty pleasures go, it has to be a stout for me, a real thick stout with tons of coffee in it and tons of like hazelnut or any type of like adjunct in there. I love it so much.
Cool. So for me, my guilty pleasure is fruited sours too. I think the reason why it comes down to that being a guilty pleasure, actually, before I say that, I agree with Rachel. You were saying the whole guilty pleasure of like a Coors or Corona or whatever it is. Like for me, High Life, you can't fuck with that. I love a High Life, bro. I'll fight you. I don't give a shit. But I will say that like a guilty pleasure to me is more like a beer that you don't want to tell everybody like, yeah, I drink that shit. Like I love that shit. Kind of like, but you do drink that shit and you love it. And Kings, everything that they make, I tend to generally like it. And like, I don't want to admit, like, I drink the fruity beers and all that shit, but fucking love that shit, dude. It's fucking solid. And I'm not saying all the beers that they come out or all the fruited sours that come out I love, but generally I do like that shit. But can't fuck with a hazy. Just a man. You know? But anyways, with all that being said, so going back to fruited sours, I'm curious to know. See, open up to anybody. What is it about fruited sours that almost, because I think a lot of you guys kind of were on the verge of that as being your guilty pleasure. What do you guys think it is about fruited sours that made it a guilty pleasure in the community? Ricky, go for it. You just
I was gonna say, man, that's one of those things where, like, you know, I don't know, like, it's for me, like, it's one of those things where I would show up to it like at a bottle share, but at the same time you think about it, you're like, nah, maybe I shouldn't show up with this shit, like, because, you know, like, you when you go to bottle share, you always show up with, because they're tasty as fuck, man. I can't deny it, but you know, you're like, damn, I don't want to bring this around the homeboys because, you know, if I'm gonna drink this at home and then I'll bring the heavy hitters to the bottle share. You know what I mean?
It's definitely the stigma for me, and I think it's a craft beer crew type thing where people like frown on the fruited sours and they're like, that's not beer, and you just don't want to be bullied about it, I guess. You don't want anyone telling you, oh, why are you drinking that shit, because you're supposed to like beer and it doesn't taste like beer. So I think that's with sours, that's why I always offer it to my friends that don't like it. I always ask them, here, try this, and they usually like it. So
good shit. It's a good gateway, if you will.
Yeah.
That's actually what I was going to say, is that this particular one that I'm drinking now is actually a sour double IPA. It's not just like, it's not a sour, or a fruited sour. This is a sour double IPA. And this was kind of my gateway into IPAs. It was stuff like this that wasn't overly hoppy that helped kind of open that door for me and make me kind of explore different kinds of IPAs. So I like Sam said, it's kind of a guilty pleasure in a way. I feel kind of the same way that a lot of people don't look at sour, especially like fruited sours, as that's not real craft beer. That's a gimmick or something like that. And there's kind of a stigma behind it. But honestly, I think there is a place in craft beer for it, because something like this was absolutely my gateway into IPAs and into that path. I really did like sours. I liked kind of the fruited flavor. I didn't like the taste of hops at first, but this kind of opened that door and made me a little bit more curious of hop combinations and stuff like that. So,
Al, I'm curious. You look like you're contemplating some serious thought right there, huh?
I am. I'm listening to all of this, but because like I've said this before, at what point does this break away from being beer? Under the grand umbrella of things, if the core of it was the Pilsner and lager, at what point, where does this reach in the spectrum of what beer is? Because you'll see charts of people with like different types of beer. This doesn't fall under anything. So at what point do we separate this? Because this to me isn't really beer. It's beer in what sense? Because it's malted and it has alcohol. So I mean, it's good, but I don't necessarily think this is actually beer, in my opinion.
I actually was thinking about that because I had a feeling you or Henry was going to bring up that kind of idea about it. I almost see it like people who are purist whiskey or tequila or vodka drinkers.
Right.
Those are great. Don't get me wrong. But, well, vodka's not. But anyways, whiskey's great. But, you know, the only way to get it out to the people would be to add Coke to whiskey or Jack and Cokes.
Sure.
Or, you know, make margaritas or whatever type of mixed drinks. I'm not saying that this is like a crazy mixed drink, but I think that's the way to get it out to the community, the whole gateway idea. And it's not necessarily a beer per se or a whiskey per se. It's a whiskey plus something to get it to people so they'll actually consume it. Does that kind of make sense?
Right. It's like kind of adding sugar to the medicine before you give it to the kids. Like you want to, you know, make it palatable and palpable. So in that case, this would be a perfect way for me to introduce people who don't get into beer beer. Here, try this first. And then I would gradually bring them into something like, you know, regular IPAs and West Coast IPAs and other things. But this would be a great way to start because this is the sugar in the medicine, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Henry, what were you gonna say? I think
Well, I agree with Al. I mean, this is, a fruited sour doesn't fall in any category of beer, period. If you're gonna submit a, home brewer or industry brewing is gonna submit a beer for competition, there's no category to put this in, but they're actually looking at putting fruited sours and a whole arranged, sour IPAs into actually one category to be judged.
Interesting.
So let me ask this, to Henry and whoever else actually kind of knows better, is that I know that it kind of originated with like saisons and stuff like that, but like sour ales, where does that start to sour ales and say fruited sours? Where does that start to break off of the path of it being an ale and now it being basically just a smoothie with alcohol in it, a fermented smoothie? Like at what point does that actually break off that path?
Can I give what I think is a basic answer, Al and Henry, and then you guys will give more in depth, obviously. I think honestly what it is, just the adjuncts, adding shit to it. That's what made it like not a pure sour. You start throwing shit in there that I like, don't get me wrong, but that's what threw you off the path. Henry?
Yeah.
So this is what I found out from traditional sour ale makers. A lot of the brewers that I had talked to was, oh, you want to mask something? There's an off flavor in your beer? Throw a bunch of fucking fruit in there. And that's it. And that's actually where it originated from. It's the mistakes that you were making in a sour ale and you were trying to cover it up.
Crazy.
And so fruited sours and all that all started because of that. The mistakes that were made during fermentation. And they were like, all right, you know what? Screw it. We're going to throw 500 pounds of strawberries in there and let's see what happens.
Nice. That's crazy. Al?
I mean, I think that's definitely part of it. But generally speaking, when you add fruit or you condition a sour beer on fruit, it's just going to increase the acidity of that beer, which is the purpose of a sour beer, right? You brew it specifically to be sour, acidic, tart. So conditioning a beer on fruit, like barrel aging it, throwing it over some raspberries, is so different than what we're seeing now, the new trend of straight up just pouring in a smoothie worth of fruit inside of the beer. I personally am like, I most of my bottle collection is classic sours that have been conditioned on fruit, but that don't have fruit in it. And so for me, like, I love the extra acidity that like strawberries bring to a sour beer, even though like strawberries have a weird fluctuation in bottle aged or barrel aged sours. Like while they're in the bottle, they'll go from super tart to then super sweet back to super tart. And that has to do with the strawberries chemical makeup, someone explained it to me once. And, but yeah, I feel like now the trend is just like the thickness of a beer is something that people are obsessed with, the mouthfeel. And now with adding all of that smoothied fruit to it, you get a full bodied beer, something that's so different than even your typical macro beers, that are like drinking water. So I think there's a lot of appeal, not only in the sweetness, but in the general feel of the beer. It doesn't taste like beer. And I think that is the appeal. Although I agree with Al and Henry that it's a gimmick. It is very gimmicky, but I don't mind the gateway, right? It's definitely bringing in new people. I like that aspect of it, but that's for me is why it's a guilty pleasure. It definitely is not a traditional sour beer that I personally would enjoy.
So I don't think we actually heard from you, Rachel, as far as like the guilty pleasure thing. You actually hit on the two spectrums, like from what I've known about you, but also what you kind of briefly mentioned. You're very into those barrel aged sours and also like the thick, sandbox type, delicious, thick frosé type, or not frosé.
I like it all.
But my question is, why do you think, like I asked everybody else, that we see it as a guilty pleasure? Because it's weird in the sense that like I think everybody here is pretty comfortable with what they drink and doesn't give a shit, honestly.
Yeah.
But in general, I think that those thicker beers are a guilty pleasure. So how do you, as somebody who drinks the two spectrums of the sours, feel about the fact that one of your beers, in a sense, is a guilty pleasure?
I think it has a lot to do with everything that everyone has said. It's like a combination of it being a sweet, not on the regular charts kind of beer that is different and like actually strays off of what you would consider traditionally brewed beer, that makes it like so thick, sweet, and like decadent in that kind of way. But also it is the fact that a lot of people who are purists or just traditionalists in their beers, they do frown upon drinking these types of beers. And I think that for me is where it does come in as a guilty pleasure, because when I first got into beer, the people that I most associated with were beer snobs. Like, that's why I have this, because I associated with beer snobs who made me max out all my allocations of beers. And we went to only Firestone Walker Invitational because that is the best fest ever. And then I was like, there's like way better fest everywhere. But
Good friends you have there.
but it's
Those
a
are good
great
friends.
fest. It's cool. But
It's a real good festival.
they very much were like, a lot of them were home brewers, and so they did kind of look down upon these types of beers. So for me, that is kind of why it's like my closeted secret beer that I like to drink, because I don't want to annoy my beer snob friends, you know. But I know they drink it too. I know they drink it behind closed doors.
So J-Hump, we haven't heard from you a lot. You actually, I thought was interesting, your guilty pleasure was a beer that I think a lot of people would be like, hell yeah, I want to drink that are purist, which is a stout with a bunch of coffee and shit. What about you? What do you think of all these guilty pleasure beers, man?
I want to go back to like those gateway beers, like say for instance, we were talking about like the smoothies and all that stuff. I'm not a sour guy. I'm not a smoothie guy. But the beers that you guys gave me were a smoothie, and I think I had one more smoothie. They were fucking good. I guess you can't knock it till you try it. So a lot of them put like lactose in it.
Yeah.
So I stray away from it. But like that's definitely a gateway to get you into sours for like a non-sour drinker. So now I've been like drinking like sour IPAs. Only had smoothies with you guys. That's about it. But I think that's definitely like a guilty pleasure because I low key like it too. I'm a closet freak, so you know.
D-Lo didn't get it wrong, man.
Hey, I was gonna say to add on to Henry's point, what he said about the adding of all the fruit to mask what they failed in and basically brewing the sour ale. Is that all? Do you think that that's also why, and I guess this can be for anybody, do you think that that's also why that they started to add lactose, is to kind of mellow out that alcohol bite or the bitterness, milk sugar, like those have started to be added a lot more to IPAs now. And you could, like, there's a lot of triples, like Adroit Theory, I know is a perfect example, that there's a lot of triples that they do that they add lactose or milk sugar, and it tastes super, super smooth. But it's not necessarily brewed perfectly to be smooth. It's that addition of something to make it smooth.
And for the mouthfeel too.
Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
I just want to say I'm a sucker for milk sugar. I am.
Oh yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I was, but lately I've like,
if my stomach
can't do it.
Yeah, if my stomach can accept it, I'll drink it left or right.
No, I dig the dank milk. Yeah, that milk. Yeah, the lactose is, yeah, that's a winner in my opinion. I don't care what it does to me afterwards. I'll suffer with it.
They're like, we were gonna throw this beer out, but we added milk sugar. Do you want it? I'm like, yes.
So now Bottle Logic is experimenting with like marshmallows instead of lactose, and then you get the same mouthfeel. I was like, all right, I can fuck with that, you know. And it tastes real good. They had to stop with marshmallows. Oh.
Going back to Drunken Monkey, Henry, what do you got to say as response for that?
Going back to the adding of the lactose, yeah, I mean, you're totally right. It's for mouthfeel. You know, IPAs, a lot of IPAs are doing that, and it's the reason you don't want that astringency coming off your hops. You want a smooth, clean beer that you're going to drink. You know, Cisco sent me that Quasi Crystal from Ad Astra.
Yes.
I had that yesterday. I'm pretty sure that had lactose in it.
I don't give a shit. I loved it.
But that was freaking phenomenal. That was the most smoothest freaking triple IPA I've ever had. That thing was good. And so, yeah, going back to Rich, lactose is just added there for mouthfeel and you know, to just enhance that taste a little bit better.
Yeah, I don't want to get a tangent too much on Ad Astra and what Will's doing, but so I'm kind of going back to something I mentioned earlier. Sam, I kind of want to get your opinion because you've been quiet lately, which is like, it's crazy how comfortable
Tipsy.
Tipsy.
we are.
That's a drop from yesterday.
We're not the type of people who would go into a bottle shop and the owner or somebody else would tell us what to get, and we'd be like, okay, I'm just going to listen to what you say. I think we're the type of people,
Yeah.
I want this, this, and this, and I don't give a shit what you tell me. That's all I give a fuck about. But yet, with that comfort, why do you think there still is a guiltiness, if you will, with it?
I think you just really want to be thought of as someone that knows the beer. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to walk in and be like, give me that shit over there. And it's straight up sugar everything.
Yeah.
And it tastes good, but it's like cotton candy beer. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just the idea, especially the bottle shop I go to at South Bay Liquors. There's a lot of, like, Ori the Hand works there. So when I walk in, if he's there and I see him watch what I'm getting off the shelf, like, he'll watch me. And so I think sometimes I'll be like, I'm only buying this because I need it for the podcast, you know. I don't want to be judged. But I do think that part of me is like, fuck it, let's do whatever I want, you know.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of it, is you just don't want to, because you like these things, you don't want to look like you don't understand beer or anything about it.
Yeah.
I think you kind of hinted at really quick. It's not we like these things. We like these people and we respect what they're saying and how they view us. And I think we don't want to disappoint them in a sense. But as Rachel said, you're right. They're drinking in the back of the closet anyway too. So what the fuck?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Exactly. But I think you're right. There's that stigma kind of, at least right now in my perception, that people that are, especially people that are only drinking these beers because they're new into the scene, they don't know about beer. And that's the stigma that comes kind of with drinking these types of beers. But I know about beer. I understand how beer is brewed. I know a lot of home brewers. I'm not interested in myself, but I like the sweet, tasty deliciousness of a fruited sour. All right.
Exactly.
I think we all can agree.
Yeah.
Pretty much. So, hey, Rachel, let me ask you, if you have a new person you've ran into that you just recently met and they're want to get into craft beers, what would you give them to kind of like, open the door? Something, something that would actually help them along and not like turned off to it.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I'm not good at that. Okay, I introduced my best friend into craft beer, and I started by giving her a Tart of Darkness from the brewery because that's what someone gave me, and it was my gateway sour, and it was not the same for her. I gave her some Black Tuesday, like all the stuff I have is stuff that I think you generally need an acquired taste for. Barrel aged things are flavors that people don't often, I'm learning now that people don't really appreciate or like. So
I'm a sucker for barrel aged.
I definitely am at this point. I'm giving out the fruited sours that I have to people. My uncle loves them. He's a huge fan. So that was easy. But on top of, like, outside of that, I just like to share whatever I like. Definitely, mostly stouts are what I have. So when I try to get people into stouts, I tend to give them pastry stouts and things with a lot of adjuncts because it takes away from that bitterness and has a nice mouthfeel. That's kind of what I tend to stick to. But yeah, I'm not good at it. I don't get people into beer.
I gotta say, Rachel, that cracks me up because the best analogy I could think of is like if you're trying to introduce somebody into football And you're like, instead of being like, let's sit down and we're gonna eat a bunch of shit food, which is like, you know, these the beers. You're like, all right, cool. I'm gonna tackle your ass, and then we're gonna go from there. It's like,
Yeah, I'm gonna knock you out first, and then
do not do that.
game.
Hey, so I'm trying to get my dad into drinking IPAs. He doesn't like the bitter taste of it. I know a sour is a gateway to it, but he doesn't like sours either. So I think he's more like a lager or something like that. He really do like hazy IPAs because like all the fruits and all that stuff. But I'm trying to get him into like the West Coast IPAs, but he doesn't like the bitter West Coast. But I'm trying to find the right one for him.
Don't push somebody into a beer that they don't like if
Right.
they've already been open to the scene. That's just me. Henry, I think you agree too.
I think it's the best
Yeah, I
way
would
is
say
to
it-
let them like slowly evolve to it on their own. That's what I
Yeah.
do.
And,
Didn't
and that's
push it
kind of
on
that's
them.
kind of like how I did. Is like I was, you know, I went to a brewery that had a very wide range or their flight. There was a flight of 10, and it was a variety, and it was excellent variety of different beers. It was, you know, porter, stouts, Hefeweizens, a sour, an IPA, you know, all these different types of beers to kind of get a feel for what those different types of beers are, and get a feel for what your palate is, to kind of get like, oh, okay, I like Hefeweizens. This is where I want to steer towards because that's what, you know, fits me or fits my palate. I think something like that would be a good way to also kind of get somebody started in is a good variety, small taste. They're not committed to a large glass of beer or something like that, or even going to a brewery that's like straight IPAs. If it's a brewery that has a good variety that they could try all these different styles, that'd be a good starter. That's kind of how I got an idea of what I liked.
Cool. With that being said, thank you everybody joining us. Special thank you to the Richness.
Where's Rachel?
I'm here.
Thank you.